All right, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is our ORCID US Community May 2023 community call. Today we're going to be going in depth with our collaboration data visualization, which is a very new kind of project, but we also have some resources for you. So we're going to talk about all of this today. Before we get started, just a few logistics. Feel free to use the chat to put as many questions and comments as you would like throughout the session. We are going to have time at the end of the session to do Q&A discussion. There will also be a few periods of time throughout that we'll stop and ask if anyone has questions. But do feel free to put those into the chat as they come up. And your sound, your microphone and your video, you can't turn them on right now, but when we get to the times to do the questions, you'll be able to use those. Also, the captions, the auto transcriptions should be available for you. You can turn those on and off in your Zoom controls. And this call is being recorded. The recording and the slides will be shared after. All right. So just some quick introductions. Welcome if this is your first time joining us, or for many of you, you've come to lots of our community calls. My name is Sheila Rabin. I am the program leader for persistent identifier communities at Lyrasis. So that is our ORCID US community, and we also have a DataCite consortium. So I work on both of those. And then my colleague, Paolo Guhilde, is also with us on the call today. Paolo is our ORCID US community specialist. And many of you know Paolo as well. So that's the two of us. We are your ORCID US community staff. And today we have a very special guest that I'm pleased to introduce. So a little backstory here. Last year, from July through December, the ORCID US Community Program through Lyrasis was able to participate in the Drexel University Leading Program. And that's an acronym that stands for Library and Information Science Education and Data Science Integrated Network Group. So this is basically a program where organizations can partner with fellows participating in this program to work on specific projects related to data science. And so we were lucky enough to work with two fellows. Negin Agassibek is with us on the call today. Negin is the data visualization librarian at the University of Washington Libraries. And then Olivia Given Castello. She's the head of business, social sciences, and education at Temple University Libraries. So Negin and Olivia worked with Paolo and I for 6 months last year to create basically some resources that are open. Anyone can use them to create basically a map of publication collaborations from researchers at a single organization. And so that's what we're going to be talking about on the call today. This is an example of what kind of a final product would look like, and I'll actually take you out to the interactive version. So basically, there are 4 tabs. So if you were to use our resources, this is what the final product would look like. And today we're going to cover how to use the resources to create something like this for your own organization. So the first tab is just the background, which gives some context about what this is, how to work with it, how to customize it, and where to go for support and questions. The summary dashboard is the next tab, and it shows, so basically what this does is we're using ORCID data, so data from your researchers' ORCID records, to find all of their publications, all of your researchers' publications, and then who they collaborated with within a given time frame. So for this example, we're looking at Temple University and Hospital in 2022. So there are tools available to go out, get this data from ORCID records, and also cross-ref DOIs and create this kind of dashboard. So basically, the summary dashboard shows the number of article collaborations that were found based on the information in people's ORCID records for that year, 2022, the number of different cities represented in that collaboration data, and the number of ORCID IDs represented. And then it will also show you the top 5 organizations that had the most collaborations with researchers at your organization, or in this case, Temple University and Hospital. The collaborations map tab, this is really kind of, for me, the highlight because it's the visual. But this will show you basically a heat map of collaborations. So you can kind of see geographically where researchers are partnering with researchers at other organizations. You can see there's other places all over the globe, a lot in the United States, and a lot of collaborations in what looks like the same city as Temple University is in. And again, down at the bottom, there's a list of all of the institutions that are represented in this collaborations map, and they're in alphabetical order. So you can just kind of scroll down and see the sheer number of organizations that researchers at your institution partnered with. And then it will also show you the number of article collaborations for each organization. And then last but not least, there's an individual search tab. And this is where individuals at your organization, or in this case, individuals at Temple University, can plug in their own ORCID ID and search for just their own information within this data, within this map. So, you know, this is really important because if your researchers don't have an ORCID ID, they're not going to be represented in the map, for example. If they do have an ORCID ID and they have their publication information in their ORCID record, they can put their ORCID ID in here and search for it, and it will zero in on the collaborations for that specific person. So this is just kind of an overview. And this is just kind of my introduction. I have one more slide that I'm going to go back to, which is our resources and documentation. So on the call today, Olivia and Nagin are basically going to walk us through how to create something like this map for your own organization. But if you, for whatever reason, have to leave early or whatever the case may be, we have documentation on our website, and we also have a GitHub page where the resources are. So just wanted to draw attention to those, and we can put the links to these in the chat so you can kind of follow along if you'd like. Basically, the resources are an R script, so you can run the script for yourself. Olivia is going to talk about how to do that and some important things to note about running the script. Just know that if you're trying to really follow along, you probably won't be able to because the script can take a while to run, especially depending on how much data there is for your organization. So you might just want to kind of bookmark that and go back to it later. And then we have basically a Tableau public dashboard template that Nagin created, and that's where you kind of plug the data in to create the actual map and dashboard. And so Nagin is going to talk about how to do that once you have the data output from script. Okay, I think that was all I was going to say for my introduction. With that, I'm going to hand it right over to Olivia to get us started.
Okay, Thank you, Sheila. Can everyone hear me? Great. So I'm going to share my desktop here so that I can go through the R script portion in order to generate a CSV file of data from your organization that you could then upload to the Tableau public dashboard. So just one thing I'll say first is that if you're not comfortable with R, Sheila and Paolo are able to do this step for you and generate a data file for your organization and your time period of interest. But if you are comfortable with R, it's all on GitHub and you can also run it yourself. Um, if there are any questions that go into the chat, Sheila or any of the co-hosts, if you could just say something verbally, it's just very hard for me to monitor the chat at the same time with the
Absolutely.
whole desktop shared. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I understand. I will let you know if anything comes in.
Great. So whether you're running it yourself or you're getting help from Sheila and Paolo to run the R script, you're going to want to gather a little listing of the sort of names and identifiers that relate to your institution. Because our institutions actually tend to have multiple. So here, I'll just show first a document that is an example from Temple. There are even more subsets of Temple than I'm showing here, but we have satellite campuses, we have a hospital system, we have numerous research institutes, and these have sometimes their own email domain, and then they often have some of their own identifier numbers. This 4-digit number or 5-digit number is a Ringgold ID, that it's a type of institution identifier. This is a grid ID, and then this is a ROR ID. So you'll want to just list out which institutions you're interested in including, because there's a ability in the script to either run a simple query or run a query that includes multiple. If you're looking for how to find the identifiers, the ROR website is a good place to start. You can search the registry for your organization, and it will start bringing up, it will sort of surface those subsets you might not know about. When you click on any one record, I also think it's helpful that it presents links to other organizations that are related that you could click on, and it will give you the ROR ID and the grid ID as well. The Ringgold website, you have to register for a free account, but here too, once you're registered, you can just search an organization and it will tell you the Ringgold ID. It will also give you a clue of what other sub institutions might be out there that you want to be aware of. And we build this list because when you do the search in the R script, if you want to try to be as complete as possible, because people can set up their ORCID profiles in with all different wordings and all different ways, it can be good to make a query that will bring back any of the above. So I'll show you that in just a second. To actually run the script, let me just head back to the GitHub. You can just download the entire repository by going to the code button, download a zip file, and then unzip it. And what will be there includes several things, but what we're going to look at today is the R script, and there will be an empty data folder. That is where the output files from the script are going to show up. Okay, so to run the R script, you want to download R Studio. This is a software for your desktop. It's free and it's for developing and running R scripts. So that's an important step. Okay, so just getting to the R script itself. I already have it open in R Studio. So, you know, R Studio kind of has a dashboard. I've got my code here. I have a console. There'll be output messages to the console. I have a space that's showing me my sort of current environment with variables, and these are data frames because I've already run a few things to set up this demo. And then there's a help documentation section in the lower right. So in this script, the code comments are very detailed. And basically, you would just be going line by line through the script, running each line of code. The code comments will give you context and instructions. And I am going to try to cover today every place where the comments are instructing you to do something. Sometimes that could be something optional where you need to uncomment a line and then run the line. So if I were uncommenting a line, I would just delete the hash symbol from the first character. And then to run a line of R code, it's either Command Enter on a Mac or Control Enter on a PC. But I'll actually run lines in a few minutes. There are also places in the script where it's necessary for you to fill in the information about your organization before you run a line. Okay. So the first thing I want to cover are things that you need to do the first time you run the script and then won't ever have to do again. So one of those things is to install packages in R on your computer. So all of this is commented because these are all already installed for me. But the first time you run the script, you'll want to make sure that all of these are installed by uncommenting and running everything. Then to actually use a package in R, you run these library commands. And so as you can see, when I just hit Command Enter on my Mac and it ran this line, it just confirmed what it was running in the console and it moved my cursor to the next line. So I would just be Command Enter down, 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 and it's going to take me down the page. Okay. The second thing you need to do for first time setup is actually get your ORCID API access registered, set up, and ready to go. So there are detailed instructions here. You need to have an ORCID account. Then you'll need to register for free public API access. And when you do that, it's going to give you a client ID and a client secret. So you want to take note of these and then paste them in these lines where it says paste my client ID here. Throughout the script, whenever you are filling your own information into a variable, you want to just replace the capitalized text that says paste whatever here, not the quotation marks. You need to keep the quotation marks for the line to run correctly. So I would paste in my client ID, my client secret, and then I would run this line here, which will actually ask for a authorization token to read public data from the ORCID API. And I just can confirm what that looks like by running this line here. It's like a long string of numbers and dashes. And I'm going to need to do something with this token now. I need to store it in the environment in R. And so the next thing I'm going to do is run this line, which will open a new tab in R, which is my environment, custom environment settings. So there are detailed instructions in the code comment right after that, telling you what to type. But basically, you need to paste the token from down here in the console into this value in the environment variable. And then I also need to give it an email that it's going to use when it talks to Crossref for the DOI information about particular publications. And then I save that, just Command S or hit the disk icon to save. And then I need to actually restart my R session. That's session menu, restart R. So I'm not going to do that here because that would close down our studio and then it would load it back up again. So those two things, installing packages and setting up the API access, you do them once and you should not have to do them again. When R reopens, to proceed working with the script, just you're going to need to load those libraries again. Otherwise, it will give you errors that the libraries aren't loaded. So I would just run down this list of libraries again. And then I can jump back to the line. I can skip over all of this environment variable stuff, and I can jump back to this line if I want to just confirm that I've got that token. I run that, it will print it out again. And then I'm at the portion of the script that is asking me to set up a bunch of variables that are particular for my organization. So just going down the list here, this script needs to know what your working directory is. So that means the directory where your R script is. So like on my Mac, I would just go to the folder where I have the R script. I would right click, choose get info, and I can just copy what's in this where field. And again, not pasting over the quotes. I just paste in my working directory and then I would run that line. I need to tell it what year I'm interested in. So in our example, we're looking at the collaboration data since 2002. It will get everything since January 1 of whatever year I specify. So I run the line and you see it sets a variable that shows up on the right. Then I set up my institutional identifiers. This is just a basic set where you should put the main identifier for your main organization. So for my example, Temple University, I would just enter each of the basic IDs here. This is going to be used in like the more simple query further down. Next, it asks me for a keyword. So I am going to enter a short keyword here that is going to be used later to filter even further to be sure I have ORCID profiles from my own organization only. The keyword for this example, Temple, is fine. If you have a sort of short name in your organization that is a very common word, you might need to have a keyword that is less short, or maybe it's even the full name of your school. So for example, I was thinking of like the new school in New York. The short keyword new, that's a very common word. It's going to be in a lot of university names. So for that school, I would actually say the keyword probably has to be new school rather than just new. Then I fill in the organization, the main organization name, city, state or region, and country. This is going to be used in the occasional case where the home author location, precise location info is blank. Then here's where I have my choice of how complicated of a query I want to run for the ORCID profiles from my organization. The simple query is in choice 1. I can just set that if I want to test this out quickly. If I want to include all those different IDs that I've listed out, I would do choice 2. And to do that, I need to edit the query a bit. So I've already filled in the additional IDs for the Temple Hospital. And to keep building this query, I would just copy the line about emails, and I would edit it to fill in the hospital email domain. And then I would copy the line for the organization name, and I would just change it for the hospital. This is included in the script you download from GitHub, just to give you an example of the formatting, and you can just go in and change it for your own organization. If you don't need this many lines, just delete a full line, and the query will still work. That's all the custom variables. So after this, for the most part, you're just running each line down the script. And as I mentioned, you'll see things change over here on the right. You'll see variables be created. You'll see data frames be created. If you're interested in looking at the data frames, you just click on them in RStudio and they'll open as a new tab and you can sort of inspect what's going on. Or you can just keep running every line down the page. There is one, at various sections, there are numerous sections to the script. There's, the part where it's querying ORCID profiles and filtering to your organization. There is a part where it then gets all the works from those profiles. Then it queries Crossref using the DOIs that it found in those lists of works. And then it gets the co-author information. And then it builds the CSV file at the end to upload to Tableau. At all of the turning points in the script, it gives you an opportunity, it's commented by default, but it gives you an opportunity to uncomment and write like an intermediate sort of temporary file. So if I run this, it will actually put a file in this data directory. It just put that file right there. It's just an intermediary file. And if I wanted to read it back in and come back to the script without running everything previous to this line, I could read the data back in and kind of start in the middle. I don't do that so often, but whenever I run the script, I do usually write out every temporary file, like just in case if something fails and I want to restart it later, it just makes it easier to do that. There's one more section down here where it is possible to edit something. So I'm just going to, we're down in the section where it's filtering ORCID profiles to get who is currently at your organization. So there's a point in the script where it's got lots of records from ORCID, and you have the opportunity here to see what the variation in the organization name looks like according to these ORCID profiles. So I'm just going to run this line where it says view, and that's going to open a new tab. So it just opened this tab that I'm looking at here. And you can see like there's so much variation in how like the organization name appears on ORCID profiles. Most of them are just Temple University, but there's also these other ones. So it's good to eyeball this to kind of make sure these are really your organization. And then the script gives you another choice. You can either accept that list if it looks pretty good to you, and run this line here, choice 1, or if the list doesn't look good for you, first of all, it is an indication that you might want to go back and change your filtering keyword. That would be a way to improve what the query is pulling back. But if you feel like you've got that as good as it can get, you can also run a more granular filter by adding lines to this statement right here. Like, let's say, I'm seeing things in the list. I pick out everything that I want to include, and I would just copy and paste it, or, you can type it if you want. All the variations that are okay with you, you can add them here and then run this line, and that will only take the ones that you've specified. And from here down, you just run every single line of the script. It's going to do all sorts of things, variables, data frames, output files, and then at the very end, it will write this file, orcid-data.csv. That will show up in the data folder. And if you look at an Excel, it looks like a CSV. And you can now do whatever other cleaning you might want to do, or you can do nothing and just upload this to Tableau, and it will create, it will supply the data for the custom dashboard. I have found it can be a good thing to do more cleaning specifically of the organization names and the city names. So I just show you a quick example of that. I have done this in OpenRefine. This is like a super handy data cleaning tool that is free and open. And so here I have an example already loaded with the Temple data. In particular, like the co-authors organization, if I am in OpenRefine and I just want to look at the list of co-author organizations so I can possibly clean that up, I would just do a text facet on organization 2, that's the co-author organization, and I would look at the list. And so let's say I've got Baylor College of Medicine and Baylor University. Maybe I just want to consider them both to be Baylor University. I can just go in and edit the one that I want to clean, apply the change, and then it does that at scale. Like for every place where that appears, it has just edited it. Then when I am done with my cleaning, I just export to a comma separated value file and just make sure the name is orcid-data.csv, and you'll be able to use that in the Tableau dashboard. And it will produce something like this, which Nagin is going to show us in just a second. So that, I'm ready to take a couple questions, I think.
Great, thanks, Olivia. So yes, if anybody has questions about the portion of this where you're running the script or filling in any of the variables, or anything that Olivia talked about. Let's see. You should be able to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask, or you can put it in the chat. So we'll just take a few minutes. We did have some questions come in that I was able to answer in the chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Sherry, your question about needing an API token to use the public API. My understanding is that is required. So there may be other people on this call that could answer this question a little bit better, but my understanding is if you already have somebody's ORCID ID number and you just want to get data off of their ORCID record, you don't necessarily need an access token to do that if it's public data. But in general, if you're just going to be kind of searching like we're doing here, the entire ORCID registry, you do need that public access token to do so, just to kind of verify the activity.
Yeah,
Olivia.
the script needs that. Like it's using the R ORCID library that needs that info. You know, but that client public API client secret, you know, it's free to get that. You just register for it, and so yeah. And then Aaron asked, would a special character in the keyword string break things? I don't think so. Because when the keyword's used, it's in closing quotes. So I don't think that would break it, no. But I haven't tried that, so just don't hold me to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. There may be, you know, we have done our fair share of testing on this, but there may be little things that scenarios that haven't come up during our testing. So if you want to run this yourself, if you come across anything weird, any roadblocks, definitely let us know. Because yeah, there very well may be things that we haven't come across that need to be addressed, but a lot of little kind of caveats or things that we have run into there are like special instructions commented in the script for what to do in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many places where code improvements are possible, like, please don't judge me. And I have, even in preparing for today, I was like, oh, this should really be in its own file, or, you know, this is the type of thing that Nikina and I have tried to do a write-up of all the possible code improvements and workflow improvements, and hopefully the next leading fellows will be able to make those and just making it freely available on GitHub really lets anybody who wants to dig into it contribute to that.
Indeed. Okay, well, if anyone does have additional questions, feel free to keep putting those into the chat, because we will have time again kind of at the end to fully discuss and think about all this and talk more about additional questions.
Okay, I'll stop my share now.
Perfect. Thanks, Olivia. So now we will hand it over to Nagin to walk us through what you would do once you have that CSV file that's the output of the script.
Awesome. Thanks, Sheila and Olivia. And I'm going to share my screen too. All right, so I will just start with a general overview and say that this version of the dashboard is just a sort of preliminary version. It is meant to be very lightweight. You can work on it in your browser, but it is definitely a starting point. I think there are a lot of areas where you could expand on it and change it and add, just add to it in ways that makes sense for whatever your needs are. So like Olivia said, in addition to code improvements, I think we're also very open to any suggestions or ideas you have for the dashboard itself. And this includes any of the instructions or sort of documentation that we have that goes with it. So I'm going to do a really quick breakdown of Tableau, two of Tableau's products. One of which is Tableau Desktop, the other is Tableau Public, which is the one that we've used here. And I think it's important just really quickly to distinguish them because they both do have desktop apps, and you could work on Tableau visualizations in the browser regardless of where you've shared it or saved it. But the important differences are that Tableau Desktop is paid, you have to pay for it, and it lets you save files locally to your device. But Tableau Public, it's free, but everything that you save is saved to Tableau Public's server. So I say that because if you have any sensitive information or anything you don't want to be shared out publicly or just saved with Tableau, I wouldn't recommend saving it on Tableau Public. So if you go away and like decide you want to add additional components to the dashboard that you don't want shared out, it's not really the right tool for that. That said, you can publish a dashboard on Tableau Public and hide it from being able to be found by searching. So essentially, it's only findable if you have a direct URL or if it's embedded somewhere. I'll also add that Tableau Public Online is somewhat limited in its functionality. It can do most of the things that the application to do, but some of the customization options are limited. So if you want to really make this your own and expand on it even further, I recommend checking out the desktop app because it's easier to work with sometimes, and it also has a few additional customization options that just aren't easily accessible in the online version. So the first thing is that you need a Tableau Public account. If you already have a desktop and public account, I just want to note that they were merged by Tableau a couple of months ago. So if you run into any issues, you might want to just reset your password. It's a relatively new change that they've made. And so I'm already logged into sort of a test institution that I have running here. But if you go to Tableau Public's website, there's an option to create your own Tableau Public account or Tableau account. Now they're not different. So the majority or all of the instructions are available on the GitHub. In the GitHub repository. And so we have this customizing your own Tableau dashboard set of instructions with screenshots. I'm going to do a live demo following these steps, so please forgive any weird hiccups that might come with trying to do a live demo. But yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. So let's say you have gotten your data from Sheila and Paulo, or you've run the script, and now you have your CSV. More notes, sorry, I know that there's a lot of context, but I'm going to spend a lot of time on steps 1 and 2, because if you get stuck at these points, you just can't move forward, and it can be really easy to miss something small and get stuck at these points. So the first thing is to be able to replace the template data with your institution's data smoothly. I recommend not changing any of the header names, any of the names of the variables in the data set, because Tableau will stop being able to recognize the fields in your data set if you change the names, and then it'll break the relationships between the fields in the data set and the fields in the dashboard, and it'll lead to a bunch of issues with the visualization and give you errors and angry red buttons. So another reason you might want to keep this the same is because the field names will be consistent with every run of the script. But of course, if you are really comfortable with R and Tableau, you're welcome to customize this. But if you're not, I recommend keeping the field names as is. And the other key thing is to make sure that your file name for whatever your CSV is ORCID-data, and that's listed here in the instructions. This is because when Tableau replaces a data source, it needs the sheet name in your institution's file to be the same as the one that was originally created for the template. Otherwise, it just will not be able to map and replace those sheets. Okay, so again, a lot of context, but these are sort of the two places where even trying to run through this earlier this week, I got stuck because I forgot to change my file name. So I'm spending a lot of time on it for that reason. It's easy to get stuck here. So to get started, after you've created your Tableau Public account, we have an ORCID US Community Tableau Public profile. And that has the template dashboard. It should be the only visualization for now, at least in on this profile. And you'll want to click on it once you've logged into your Tableau Public account, and you can make a copy of it by clicking on the Make a Copy button. And all of this might take a little bit of time. Tableau does need a tiny bit of buffer time, and this data set is quite large. So there might be little bits of buffer time here and there, but I'll try to fill it in with other tips that might be useful. All right, so you should be seeing this at this point, and you'll want to save this to your own Tableau Public profile by clicking on Publish As, and it'll let you add a title, and I'll click Publish. Loading time. And at this point, you're ready to replace the data source. So it's going to show you an error because, again, Tableau Public just it's not saving the data with it. It's ready for a new file. I say, yes, I want to replace it, and I will upload from my computer where I've saved it in my folder. And again, this is a part where it might take a little bit of time, but hopefully you should get to some page that looks a little bit like this. At this point, you'll want to create an extract. And depending on your file size, this will take anywhere from several seconds to several minutes. But the reason why you need to do this is because Tableau does not automatically extract and save any data that you link to it. It basically remembers the path that it needs to take to read the data, but it doesn't automatically save that data. And you'll want to save that data in order for the visualization to work properly in Tableau Public. So thankfully, it did not take super long time for us this time around. And now that I've created an extract, I can move on to the summary dashboard and really get started on the customization. So I'm going to pause for 1 second and just explain sheets, dashboards, and stories in Tableau. So Tableau offers all three versions, and I'm circling at the bottom here the different options. So much like an Excel workbook, Tableau offers worksheets. And worksheets are really intended for individual single visualizations. And then you can take your worksheets and pull them into a dashboard, and a dashboard allows you to pull in multiple worksheets that can sort of interact with each other. And from there, you can pull dashboards or worksheets into what's called a story. And the story is what you've seen with the example that has these tabs at the top. The reason why I mention this is because the majority of changes that you want to make with customization will be done in worksheets. You actually can't make any real major changes when it's in a story. So right at this last tab that's called full visualization, everything will be updated as you update it in these other tabs. You don't need to make any changes, but because they look very similar to each other, it can get it's easy to accidentally click on the full visualization and get stuck not being able to update something and then have to go to the other either dashboards or visualizations. So I just wanted to note that really quickly as well. But yeah, so we're going to get started by changing the names. And in Tableau, most things can be changed by either, most text can be changed by double clicking on the text that exists. So I'm going to change this to Temple University and hospital, if I can type, since 2022. And I not remember when the data was pulled, but it's important to include this. So I will put in April 2023 and verify that later, and click OK. And so just as a reminder, the script pulls data from January 1st of the year requested to the present date of the data pull, and that's why it's important to include when that data was pulled. So from here, you can scroll down to this bar chart, which is the highest number of collaborations with the following organizations. And, we'll notice right away that one of the highest collaborating organizations is Temple University itself, which makes sense. Probably a lot of people co-authoring at the same institution. So if you want to remove it, you can click on it, click exclude, and Tableau will automatically reconfigure this to include the other top collaborating institutions. At the bottom here, this is totally optional. You can remove this entirely, but for accessibility purposes, you can change the, write out the names and include the top 5 here. I won't go through writing out everything, but just noting that, again, there's another spot here where you can change this caption. So if I want to change the colors, what I can do is click on this little pop out, which says go to sheet. So every visual will have this tiny pop out where you can click on it and it'll take you to the worksheet itself, which has been, which is at the bottom here, but is usually hidden just to keep things a little clearer. And let's say I want to include Temple's colors for these bars. I can pull up this legend again, edit the colors and double click and add Temple's custom colors using this hex code here. So there's a lot of customization that you can do. Again, it's a little clunkier than it would be if you're using the desktop app. So just something to keep in mind, but you can still do all of this just in the browser without having to leave or install anything. So I created this, and if we go back to the summary dashboard, we'll see that the colors here have been updated. Let's say I also want to add Temple's logo. So I will add instructions. I'm realizing now there aren't any instructions on how to add images to Tableau dashboard, so I will add instructions, but you can also add images to your Tableau dashboard. And you'll just want to save an image file, you can add alt text, which is relatively new as well for Tableau. And it will bring in whatever images you want to add. Resizing is a little bit clunky sometimes, just as a heads up, but you can add logos, you can add any other sort of photos or anything that is relevant to this visualization. Perfect. I also just want to go back really quickly to this page and say that this is what's called the marks card. This is sort of where you can do a lot of other customizations. I think I encourage you to sort of play around with it and just experiment with the aesthetics and all the different options that Tableau has. All right, so moving along, next is going to be the collaborations map. So similar to how we did what we did in the summary dashboard, I'm first going to go to the dashboard for collaborations, then click on the map, and then ask it to take me to the worksheet. And here there are a list of institutions that pop up as you, or sorry, not institutions, cities that pop up as you hover. So what I'm going to do is change what's called the org to group. The reason why this group exists will become clear in just a moment, but essentially what I'm trying to do is any organization that is not Temple University, I want to create a group that essentially says, these are not Temple University, don't include this in your map, and I will do this hopefully without taking too much time, excluding Temple. And to do this in Tableau, you can hold down, similar to you would any other list, you can hold down Control if you're on Windows. I think it's Command on Mac, but sorry if I'm mixing that up. And select different institutions, or you can hold down Shift and select many institutions at the same time. So I'm going to take this and add this to excluding Temple. There are a lot of places where Temple shows up here. So if you know that Temple, or whatever your institution name is, sorry, shows up multiple times, you might want to do a bit of a search. You can search down here using this search bar just to make sure that you're capturing everything. I'm going to say only Temple here, and then everything else is going to go into the excluding Temple group. All right, perfect. And click X. So I'm gonna go and go back to the collaborations dashboard. And over here is where this is going to become relevant, and the reason for it will hopefully become a little bit clearer. So I'm going to change this filter from what's called right now a multiple values list to a single values list. And what this does is essentially, if you are only interested in collaborations that happen outside of your institution, by creating these separate groups, you can actually look at those collaborations alone rather than including it. And really, this is useful when you're thinking about scale, because if you have everything, you'll notice that Temple Philadelphia is obviously very large because there are a lot of collaborations within the institution. So if we don't want to include Temple, it resizes everything. There's still a lot of collaboration in Philadelphia, lots of universities there. One of the top institutions was, I think, Drexel's School of Public Health. Makes sense. But you can kind of get a better sense of the scale across the globe here. You can also look at only Temple, which may have some institutions may have additional like sort of data weirdness just because of geocoding issues, or if you have satellite campuses potentially. But otherwise, you might want to consider just excluding your own institution if you're going to be doing any heavier lift analyses. And then I'm going to go to the individual search tab. And this is where, like Sheila was saying, you can individually search for an ORCID ID. Similar to the summary dashboard, you can make changes on the time periods. I won't go through that right now. But one thing that I wanted to note is that you can, if someone is searching and they don't find their ORCID ID, they can click on this "Why can't I find my ORCID ID" button, which takes them to this dashboard, or sorry, this page. And this page is, I think, really meant to be used as a way to support any users you work with, or to use as an outreach tool. You can imagine an author who has published since 2022, but for some reason isn't showing up in the data, might want to see why, and it might encourage them to either set up an ORCID ID, or to more fully flesh out their ORCID profile with their works and their institution information, or just check for any errors. So that is the majority of the individual search. This sort of mostly just has the date that you need to change. Everything else is very much the same. And then from here, you can make any other customizations you want. But once you're done, you can click on Publish again, and this will save the dashboard again to your Tableau public profile. Oops, and I'm going to just do one more thing, which is if you're going to be sharing this out, you no longer need this context page. So you can click on this X, which deletes the context page and just takes you directly to the summary dashboard landing page. So now I will publish. And I will show just a little bit more about what you might want to do once it's published on your profile. So it will load in just a minute. So I have this sort of set up on my own profile, but you can do things like showing sheets as tabs. You might not want to do this. I think the point of the story is to keep this a little bit neater, but if you wanted to, you could have these as tabs instead. You can also show the visualization on your profile, which makes it visible and findable. Otherwise, you can only really share it with the sharing links or by embedding it somewhere. And the other piece that's, sort of the last final touches that you can make is that at the bottom there is, and I'm sorry, I'm just moving all my zoom controls around. That's what you see my mouse doing. You can edit details. So if you want, for example, to give a more descriptive title down here or add any information about where your users can reach out for help or any additional context, any links that you want to include, you can do that here and save the changes. And it's just good to have that additional bit of context. The instructions also include accessibility resources. And so I've linked to them here. Tableau has really improved in its accessibility functionality over the years and has added things to just make things easier for users. So it's worth checking out. I will also note, in case you're new to Tableau, any changes that you make to the dashboard as an editor, and if you remember the editor view is where we could click on things, change colors, those changes will persist if you save them. Any changes that you make to the dashboard as a viewer, so if I were to go to this dashboard and click on different filters in the visualization, that all can be reset. And none of that will be changed. So that's sort of the really detailed version of going through these steps. If you do run into issues, please reach out to Sheila and Paolo, and I'm also around. And again, if you have any thoughts on the dashboard itself or on these instructions, please let us know. We've been looking at this for a long time now. So if there are spots where it would be useful to have more detail or something isn't clear for you, we're really happy to make those changes. I will wrap up really quickly by just looking at the dashboard documentation. And this does not cover everything because a lot of the decisions are actually sort of commented in the script itself. But these are some of the major decisions that we made around, how, why we didn't use the date filter, or why we're not changing any of the field names, how the dashboard is counting, why it's counting that way, and sort of our logic around aggregation. So if you're interested in that, that's where you can find this information. I've also added a little bit of content around grouping in case you forget why that even exists. And importantly, I haven't talked about this yet, but geocoding is sort of a tricky part of this because Tableau will automatically geocode data, geocode and whatever data you have in the spreadsheet. But as Olivia mentioned, the data are not perfect. So, there's some cleaning that can be done to geographic information that you can pull. So you can, sometimes Tableau just doesn't know, how to code a city, doesn't recognize it, or it's ambiguous. So, like maybe it confuses Dublin, Ireland with Dublin, Texas, or it doesn't know which Dublin you're talking about. So you can manually resolve these issues. I mean, you can resolve these just by cleaning the spreadsheet itself, which is usually the easiest option. But on the Tableau end, you can also make some changes. And I've included a link here to how to make those changes to the locations. I will also say this is a lot easier to identify and do with the desktop application. So if you are going to be doing a lot of geocoding cleanup in Tableau, you might want to consider just installing it. But again, you don't have to. You can certainly do all of this in your browser and clean up the geographic information within the spreadsheet. So, and as Livia mentioned, you can use a tool such as OpenRefine to really help you clean the data set because there's a lot of data a lot of the time. So I think those are my, that's what I've got so far. But if you all have any questions, please let me know. I'm very happy to answer whatever I can.
Awesome. Thanks, Nagin. Okay. I know this is a lot of information, but does anybody have just any questions that are coming to mind? You're more than welcome to unmute yourself to ask or also put questions into the chat. And I guess while you're thinking of questions or while you might be typing, my question for everyone on this call is, do you think that this is something that you will try to create for your own organization or look into using? I would love to hear from you on thoughts.
Hi, so this is Sarah Scheib from the University of Iowa. I hate it when I start a question with, I think this might be a stupid question, but it's actually about the initial API query of the data. And so my question is, is this only including works that are listed on ORCID profiles, or is this using cross-ref data or anything like that to return more complete results?
Yes. So we didn't get into it here extensively yet, but we have in previous presentations for Lyrasis and elsewhere, and in the documentation talk about sources of blanks and gaps in the data. This script works with whatever it can get from ORCID profiles and from Crossref. So that leaves lots of things that it can't get because they're not on an ORCID profile, or the gaps on the Crossref side in terms of usually the co-author information. So it's really just a starting point as ORCID adoption seems very good, but people might have an ORCID, but the profile is not exactly complete. It doesn't list necessarily their employment organization. It may not list their works. The script can't get that if it's not on the ORCID profile. Where it can fill in gaps, it does try to, but I mean, there's definitely gaps in the data.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Thanks for
Yeah.
the comments in the chat too. That's great that people are interested. And again, the staff and Nikki and I also are here, you know, to help try to make this more usable. Hopefully there'll be another round of fellows that can really dig in and make even further improvements.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we have a whole list of additional things that it would be great if the script could do, like, for example, including data site DOIs, as well as the cross-ref DOIs and additional things like that. Within the 6 months that Olivia and Nagin were working on this project, this is what we were able to get to. So it's just going to be a matter of time before, you know, more, before we can kind of do more with it. And we would love to hear feedback from everyone about what kinds of things you would like to see, what would be helpful. And if anyone is really comfortable working with the script is on GitHub, we would love for you to make changes to it yourself and then share those back with us. So yeah.
I think one other point I'd like to make that I learned through this fellowship and working with this code and the dashboard, that you all as ORCID liaisons and advocates at your organization can actually impact is the value of that ORCID authentication, like the machine actionable functionality that writes to people's ORCID profiles at organizations that have enabled these those like member API features, because a lot of the blanks and gaps with ORCID profiles being complete, that's because people haven't necessarily gone in and manually added all the things they've published to their ORCID profile. And then many organizations just don't have member API things enabled, so it's not automatically being written. But if it were, you know, no one would have to go in and manually complete the profile. It would just, as time goes on and things get published, it would be writing automatically to the profiles. So I think that would be make big improvements in the whole body of data.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a question about the time measurement and sort of some of the reasons why you decided not to do anything with sort of maybe time increments or changes over time. That might be something super interesting in the future to see too, sort of like if researchers are staying in a particular place and publishing with particular people and how that changes over time.
Yeah, that's one of the top priority things for the next fellows or developers to do. I mean, the reason we didn't do something like a more specific date, you know, selector or something like that is just because of the immense amount of other things that needed to get done to make this be able to be like publicly useful. And I would say for now, the workaround is that once you have a CSV file from the script, you can like clean it in really any way you want. And that includes, like, say it's April 2023, and I just did a data pull since 2002, which would be like January 1, 2002. If I just don't want those first 4 months of 2023, I only want the discrete year 2002, I could just go into the CSV file, sort it by the timestamp, which is in there, and just delete the rows for the first 4 months. That's the workaround that you'd have to do right now. But for future, that's at the top of the list for future improvements.
Awesome, thank you.
And I'll add too, there are ways, we don't have this in the template dashboard, but there are ways in Tableau to do sort of year to year or to like discrete time units comparisons. So that is another area potentially to improve that if you're looking for a tool to sort of share with users more so and show those differences over time. So yeah, hopefully the next round.
Right, and I'm even thinking more of the automation of that too within Tableau, especially. That would be really, really cool to see how those geographical bubbles sort of changed over that period, especially since you have 20 years of data, which is great.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because all of the underlying data is coming from ORCID records, basically as a starting point. ORCID started in 2012, so you probably won't get very many results if you go back further than 2012 for this particular script, just due to the fact that it's all based on data that's in ORCID. And then also, you know, seeing the kind of progression of ORCID adoption amongst researchers over time will also probably reflect that too. Like maybe there weren't very many collaborations in 2012, according to the data, because not very many people had an ORCID record then. And then over time, you're probably going to see more because more people have ORCID records. So that is one thing to keep in mind as you are looking at this, is like, it's not necessarily showing you a full picture of collaborations. It's really limited to what's included on people's ORCID records. But again, as Olivia was saying, it's a good tool for kind of showing the importance of making sure your ORCID record has information in it. If you can, as an organization, using the member API to add information to people's ORCID records so that that data is there and available. And really this whole project is kind of an example of the kind of data science-y things that can be done with data in ORCID. So we're hoping that not only will people use this and find some value in it, and if you do, let us know, because we definitely want to hear your experience and your feedback, but also we're hoping this will inspire people to do more things, build on this script, do other similar things, etc. Awesome. Thanks for all the comments in the chat. We still have 10 minutes in our scheduled call time. So we're more than happy to continue discussing with anybody who wants to even get into more details potentially. But I think the main message to remember from this call is that these resources are available, and even if you feel a little potentially overwhelmed, or maybe you've never used R before and you just want some support, Paolo and I are here to help you in whatever way that we can. So don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks, everyone. And thank you to Nagin and Olivia for creating these resources and going through the presentation today. I will get the notes kind of cleaned up, get the recording and well, the slides, but really the slides aren't going to be super helpful. It's the documentation that you're going to want, and those are linked in the notes.
Yeah, Nikki, and I feel like I got a refresher on Tableau. What do you call it? Sheets, visualizations, sheets, stories, the three.
Yeah, dashboards, yeah.
I understand that a lot better now. I mean, I can think of so many ways to actually use Tableau now in my own job. just from understanding that I can have the separate visualizations and that's what that hierarchy means. I never truly understood that, even despite the fact that we've worked on this for months.
Yeah, and it's not
Tableau's
super
a lot.
intuitive. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of you can really go into a lot of detail, a lot of depth with it. So yeah, I'm always
Okay.
learning new stuff I just didn't know.
Yeah. All right, great. Well,
Are there any last minute questions or comments for anyone still on the call? Speak now. Okay, well, thank
alrighty.
you all so much.
Yeah, thanks. This was good.
Yep, we'll be in touch as always, and thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay.
Talk to you
See you
later.
soon.
All
Bye.
right, bye.
Bye.